Yeah, you sent me this the other day. Something about jail and wrestlers and stuff like that.
Yes, I did.
Should we?
Did you read it?
No, you never sent it me. I looked through my emails. I can't find it.
Oh God. So now you're saying that when I send you something, you're not getting it.
Apparently so. I honestly don't know what. Was this an article you read?
Yeah, it was.
Okay, can you
You
get?
want me to resend it? But you want me to resend it real quick?
Yeah, resend it. In fact, I'm going to pause the recording while
Pause
Dutch
it right
resends
here.
it.
Okay.
Okay, Dutch has sent me this email, and it's from Wrestling Inc., and it is a series of wrestling personalities that have been arrested, and the very, very fit. Oh, is this currently residing in jail?
Yeah, most of them, well, not currently. Some of them are, and some of them aren't.
Okay. First one is Tammy Sytch, aka Sonny.
Yep. For what you do.
Well, murder, really, but
Yeah,
manslaughter.
that's recent. That's within the last year.
Hmm?
And she's out drunk. Believe me, Tammy out drunk in a car and driving. And she hits this guy, 75 years old, 74 years old, and hits him right in the rear and kills him. And then she tries to get out of it. I think they let her out one time. And then they said, well, you better get her back because she'll take off. And she would probably. And she was out drunk. And she's already been, this was in Florida, and she's already been arrested 3 or 4 times for drunk driving. And what are all these laws supposed to do? This is, I sued the state of Tennessee over my granddaughter because the guy that was out driving, he had just been let out of prison uh, for I forgot what he did, but he was in prison. But they let him out early, and then he ends up getting drunk and getting doped up, and then he hits my granddaughter and kills her. So and I was suing the state of Tennessee. What are jails for?
To
Aren't jail not to
protect the
punish
public.
right, not to punish the person, but to take the person and really put him away so he can't kill anybody else. It's really a device for the citizens of a city or a state or a country to escape this guy or this person when they go back out on the road again, because he'd already been busted like 3 or 4 or 5, 6 times for it, and they keep letting him out. So therefore, if they're that stupid, they need to be sued. I didn't follow through with it, but I should have, because that could have been anybody. And finally, I had a couple of meetings and I was living in Tennessee then. I went down to the state house for all the, I guess, the representatives have their offices. And I went in there and I sat down in front of the guy. I said, I don't know what it's going to take to interest you and your lawmaker buddies unless it happens to you personally. That's why it always worked in wrestling. You have to make the person really to feel something like he could have been in that situation too. So they just look at you, well, we can do this and we can do that because I got to worry about this group over here. Now, what about the people that the damage has been done to? What about me? What about my family? And I told him that. I actually embarrassed him in front of some other people. And they finally came out with this law, and you can look it up. It's Amelia's Law, and it's exactly for people getting paroled or, early and getting out. That's what it was for. And the guy had already been out, and then he goes and he runs across two lanes of traffic and a divider and hit my granddaughter. And he was high as he actually passed out because he was so drunk and high. So when he went, they finally got him into the hospital. They couldn't even give him any pain pills because if they did, they would probably kill him because he was full. And, God works in mysterious ways. He died before 12 o'clock that night. He did. Which and I don't like to say this. This is not, but I'm glad he died because he deserved the death penalty. And if he hadn't have died, I was seriously thinking about, and I probably wouldn't have done this, but I was seriously thinking about just walking in the hospital with a gun if I could have gotten in there with one. Now they run you through all kind of machines and all. I don't know if they would have then. And I was going to walk up and kill him. And I hate to say that, and I probably wouldn't have done it. But I think, but the mental condition I was in, I don't even think they would have convicted me. They might have said, well, he's just completely crazy. He's nuts. And I was. And I wouldn't have minded going to jail for it. I wouldn't. He took something from me that cannot be replaced. So, and if my granddaughter can't be here, he forfeited his right to be here too. Now that's tough talking. I understand that, but that was the mood I was in. And I mean, it took us when my when my granddaughter passed away, it took us at least 2 years before we could talk about her amongst each other without crying. And terrible situation, but that's what prison is for, to keep the person, the offender, away from everybody else. And that's what I embarrassed the lawmaker for. I said, if it happens to you, then you might understand. But since it happened to me, well, you're separated from it and your mind is running all these different directions, which I find I take offense at.
I can't obviously speak to, because the guy died. So he was never, tried by a jury of his peers of what he'd get. But I always find in this country, at least, and I suspect in America as well, that like death by dangerous driving kind of thing always carries such a lower sentence than it should do, as compared to if you just walked up and punched them and they hit the ground and then they died. And for whatever reason, if you're in a car or a vehicle, I don't know why there always seems to be a lesser sentence attached to it, in this country especially. Not to take away from your story, but 17 and a half years is what Tammy got. And this was over the course of a 25-year career of drunk driving and putting people at risk.
Right.
And it doesn't seem enough.
How many times has she been busted for drunk driving or driving under the influence?
Well, you said 3 or 4, but I know there was a list that Mike Johnson wrote where there was at least like 8 or 9 different instances, and she did do some time previously. I think she was given 6 months, 8 months, something like that, and that didn't stop her. So at some point, there's such a history of disregarding the law that it should play in to the sentencing, which it, even for 17 and a half years, I don't think was harsh enough.
No, I don't either. And actually, what I push for, they call it now Amelia's Law in the state of Tennessee, and you can look it up. And what it is, it's their car has to be outfitted with a certain, I don't know, program, I guess, that when they get in the car, it checks them if they've been drinking. And otherwise, the car won't start. Now, I don't know about another car, but their own personal car, it checks them to see if they have any alcohol in their system, and the car won't crank up. It won't run. So I don't know how that works or not, but I think it is still a law, and it should be like that, because a lot of people out there just driving along and just talking about something else, and something's going on. All of a sudden, here comes this car, this drunk driver, and just hits them head on, or hits them in the side, or flips them over, but it kills them. And right up to that point, everything was fine, but except this guy, this person, could be a woman, gets out and think they can just go and drink and just do whatever they want. And that's why I told the lawmaker, I said, you won't understand this until it happens to you personally. Then it takes on a whole different meaning, and it does. So, but I hope that is still a law, because I have no sympathy in my life for anybody out drinking and driving. That's why the wrestlers used to have, they had four in a car. They had one that was designated the driver, and he wasn't allowed to drink. Which I'm thinking, a bunch of wrestlers putting a self-imposed rule on the ride that night, but it actually made sense. And I think if he was dying for a beer, yeah, maybe one beer, and that's it. Because not only if he was drinking, we were at risk too. Not only the people that he may hit, but we were at risk too. So anyway, I do believe that the prison sentence, and we talked about this before we went on, is not necessarily to punish the offender, but it is to keep him away from the rest of us, so he doesn't go out on the road and kill. You don't know death is right around the corner, but it always is, because there's no telling how many cars you pass in the night, and they're halfway drunk. So if you go out, folks, riding around, just think that the person you just passed is probably legally drunk. Could be.
Let's go through the rest of this list, because I don't know what's happening. I'm actually just going to share. Okay. I'm just going to share this website with you. I'm sorry, I'm giving a Zoom thing.
You've never seen that before?
What's this? I never saw this link you sent me. So the next one here is Donovan Ruddick.
I've heard of him. I don't know who he is. What do they have him for?
Brian Michael McGee, known to his fans by a variety of ring names. Sorry, my screen's in the way. I'm doing this very quickly.
First-degree murder.
Who'd pick Donovan Ruddick as a name? Brian McGee's better than that. Anyway, DT Porter in the future is currently in prison after being charged with first-degree murder.
Oh, you wouldn't charge him with first-degree. You'd charge him for the name. See how you are?
Awful name.
That's worth a life sentence right there.
Jesus, what is all with Tampa, Florida? I tell you, just nothing but reprobates in Tampa at the moment. I tell you.
Hey, that's where I am.
Buck Zumhofe.
I'm not in. Oh yeah, he's a big F up.
Yeah, a slime ball as well. The king of rock and roll, Buck Zumhofe, was trained by Vern Gagne, Ricky Steamboat, and the Iron Sheik, and worked in WCCW and the AWA, holding multiple championships. Didn't he have the boombox? That guy.
Yep, he sure did. That's him. But didn't they have him for underage kids?
Wasn't it his own daughter?
Minors, yep.
Face legal trouble
misconduct with a minor. That's another situation I have very little tolerance for. And I've been around quite a bit of those guys.
Once again arrested in May 30. Keep in mind that he did 36 months in 86, and then the WWF hired him. So let's keep in mind that they were still hiring Mel Phillips at this point, and Terry Garvin, etc. The victim reported the abuse after seeking therapy. It's a female relative, between 1999 and 2011. So there you go.
Boy, I tell you what a business I picked to get in. It's a lot of fun, but it has a lot of, degenerates in it. I'll go as far to call them degenerates. That's what's in there. And I've known a lot of them that were top stars.
Do you, speaking of top stars, speaking of absolute jobber, Hardbody Harrison. WCW, I suspect you don't know this fella, but I believe he was...
I do know him.
Do you really?
Yep, pretty well, by the way.
Hardbody Harrison, how do you know this fella?
Well, how else would you think I'd know him?
Well, through the business, but whereabouts?
Yeah.
When did you cross paths?
Crossed paths a couple of times. In one territory, I think, Florida one time, but very quickly. And then he came to Memphis. And he was quite a character. He really was. So I think he was pimping girls. I don't think underage girls, but he was breaking the law with them. Let me say that. And I think they had him for robbery, some other stuff. And how he got in the business, I have no idea. But somebody, one of the Rhodes Scholars that appear on the wrestling list as wrestlers took it upon themselves to help this guy get into the business. And what else did they have him on? He's from Atlanta, around Atlanta, I think, somewhere.
But basically, he was rounding up homeless or drug-addicted women to work as prostitutes. He's basically a pimp, and then false imprisonment.
Yep.
Basically working them into servitude, scraping them up off the streets. Norris kept the victims financially indebted to him, according to the Department of Justice.
And drugged up.
Yeah, that's bonkers. That's bonkers as well.
Yep.
Anyway, he's never coming out, by the way. I think he's very, very much... He's basically enhancement talent in WCW, by the way, if you know the name.
Yep.
The next one is your favourite. Now, I think we've talked about this before. You've suggested more than one time, wouldn't it be great if a pro wrestler was a serial killer? And then I told you there was a serial killer pro wrestler, and it turned out to be a woman as well.
Yep. Now, this case here, if you hadn't heard about it, what is her name?
Juana Barraza Samperio, or Perio.
Yeah, but her La Dama del Silencio, the woman of quietness.
Mm-hmm.
But what she did, she wore a mask. Show that picture again, James. I can't see it. Yes, she wore a mask. And my whole thing about a wrestler being a serial killer, say, take it 40 years ago, a guy would come in, say he came into Memphis, and all of a sudden they had all these unexplained deaths. And since he would go to Alabama one night, and the next night he'd be in Kentucky, and the next night he'd be somewhere in Tennessee, and then the next night he could be in like Missouri somewhere. But it would take them quite a while to connect these deaths to wrestling. And I wasn't necessarily thinking about a woman, but this woman here is Mexican, and she did that. But she did that like signing into like medical facilities as a nurse or whatever, and she would get to know this person and her family, and then all of a sudden they get to liking her, write her in the will, and then all of a sudden the woman dies or something like that. But in the case of the serial killer in wrestling, there's never been a book written like that. So if anybody, and I thought about writing it or trying to write it, but I'm giving it to anybody who wants it. I think it'd be a great book. And I'm sure there has been a wrestler somewhere along the way who has been not necessarily a serial killer, but a person who has killed more than one or two people.
An enthusiast of murder.
Yes.
Yes.
See, I was hitchhiking one day, and I was driving one day, and I picked this guy up, and he said, "Hey, thank you for the ride." And he said, "But aren't you scared? You don't know me." I said, "I could be a serial killer." And I went, "Nah." The chances of two serial killers in the same car at the same time, it won't work. So he didn't get it, so I killed him. So anyway.
That's fine. Well, free upon
okay, read out that list again.
Well, I had to stop for some reason. Just going through the Wrestling Inc. website was killing the audio quality briefly. The last one on the list was Ken Wayne, also known as the Nightmare, as the founder and the owner. Okay, let's talk about Ken Wayne then briefly. Who was he before we get to his heinous crimes?
Well, he was a member with Danny Davis of a tag team called the Nightmares. And it turns out that he was a molester of underage kids. And I don't know where this happened. I think it happened in Arkansas. And I think
he searched his Florida home. So Florida again.
Yeah, well, that's like, see, in Florida, you have 2 or 3 different Floridas. You have like Pensacola in that area, and then you have Miami, then you have Central Florida. So you have really basically 3 Floridas. So he was probably living up around the Tallahassee, that area up through there. But yeah, but they caught him and put him in jail, and I think he's out on probation now, I think.
So